What if Draymond Green wanted to buy your restaurant? Phil Chen turned a side hustle into four bars and restaurants and eventually sold one to the NBA star himself. This is his story of grit, perfect timing, and creating amazing concepts here in San Francisco. Phil, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I think last time we saw each other was sometime in 2024. I was at the Harlequin, and that was with my old team, and that was a really, really fun time. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know that for the folks that are not from the Bay Area, that might not be familiar with your concepts, your brand, and your bars. Want to tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you got into the industry?
Sure. My name is Phil Chen. I currently own three bars and restaurants in San Francisco. Previously had four, which, if you did follow any of the San Francisco news, was one of the businesses that was sold to Draymond Green of the Warriors, which is the now open Mesquite in Lower Nob Hill. But I'm a native San Franciscan, pretty much. Moved here when I was 6 years old, so one of the few that's been here throughout my life, and very, very grateful to be a business owner in the city that's my home. And I come from a tech background. I've had a lot of help along the way, and it's been exciting to watch San Francisco change. And we're happy to be here today, still in the food and beverage business, considering how difficult it is to survive in this industry.
Absolutely. When was your first restaurant or first bar? What was the first concept?
The
And
first
when did you
one
start that?
The first one we opened was Alchemist, and we started
Alchemist. Yep.
that in 2012. We opened in 2013. And a little bit of background, I think a lot of people go like, how do you get into the industry? For me, in my 20s, I was, I kind of grew up in San Francisco when it was really like a golden era for the city. The city was bustling. Everyone was going out. I played in a rock band, and we had the scene where, every weekend we'd go to support each other's shows, and there was a huge bustling live music scene. I was a club promoter at the time, and this was during like the dot-com revival, and everybody was going to the clubs, and the city was pretty much just it's very different than what it is now. It was a time to remember where the city was really, really alive. And coming from a background of just being in that world, it was kind of it was kind of a dream when you go out a lot to be like, oh, how cool would it be to own a bar? Like how great would it be to have this be like what you did? So going back to that, I was working in tech at the time, and it was a time where startups were really like overflowing, and everyone wanted to be in a startup, and so did we. So in the midst of trying to find new business ideas, startup ideas, this opportunity to open a bar and restaurant, or a bar in general, kind of fell into my lap. And going from then to now, it was the kind of notion of your side hustle becoming your main hustle, where this was really kind of like, hey, let's start a business. So in case something ever happened to the day job, we'd have something to fall back on. And throughout the years, falling back on it became the main thing, and we got more and more invested into it, and then ended up going from one to four different establishments, and still at it today.
Tell us about, you don't come from the restaurant background, right? The restaurant industry, bar and
No,
hospitality. Why
no.
did you why did you decide that this was the industry that you wanted to dabble in and experiment? Such a notoriously difficult industry. How did
Yeah,
you come up with that conclusion that you wanted
it
to give it a
was
shot?
it kind of it was kind of like, do you ever, like, when you're filing your taxes, you like get these year-end statements from your credit card companies and your bank accounts, and in those year-end statements, they used to give you a pie chart of like where you spent your money throughout the year. And I remember looking at this pie chart, and you
It was
have
like bars and restaurants.
you have like cars and your insurance, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
like going out, like, was the for me, like, bars and restaurants was this huge piece of this pie.
Expense.
And it goes, and for me, at least, being a younger person at the time, goes, wow, like, how much I personally spent on going out, experiences, dining, socializing. It was such a big piece of the pie. And at the time, it just seemed like, wow, there's must be so many other people that will continue to spend on experiences. And the bar scene was interesting, because I had this thought that I remember, being a penny pincher. You would be in Walgreens, and you're like in the aisle, and you're like, you're looking at toothpaste or something, and you're like picking the cheapest thing what's the best value? But when you're in a bar, that all goes out the window. You would be at the bar and you say, give me 10 shots of, whatever. No one asks what the price is because you're in the moment, you're having fun, you're enjoying yourselves with your friend. And, it seemed like kind of a great industry to be in. And at the time, it felt like everyone was saying, oh, the bar industry is like recession proof. This idea of like, if you're celebrating, you're celebrating at a bar. And I think the older notion was that if you're depressed, you drink your sorrows away and you be in a bar as well.
Right.
So a lot of
Absolutely.
people used to think that the bar and restaurant industry was recession proof. We're finding out now that that's not really true. But at the time, those were all factors that led to the idea of like, hey, this could be a cool industry to be in. And it also was something that we were deeply involved in as far as just patrons of going out. So all of it kind of made sense at the time.
Tell us about the first year, the first couple of years of your first establishment. What was the first one called again?
It was the Alchemist.
The Alchemist. That's kind of down near Soma or
Oracle
near the
Park.
stadium, Oracle Park.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Yes,
So
I
we
remember
opened,
visiting that one. Tell us
yeah,
about that first year to 2 years. What was that experience like? What was the hardest part of it?
it was actually amazing. We were very lucky
Let's
to be
go.
opening at the time that we were because during that time, it was a Giants dynasty where they were coming off of
Yeah.
World Series wins in 2010, 2012, and 2014. We happened to be starting our opening process in 2012 and seeing just the madness that was happening down there because the stadium was packed. I remember standing in the empty space, and just watching like thousands of people walk down Third Street past the front doors to Oracle Park and thinking, oh my God, how can I fail at this? Because every other week we were going to have these throngs of people at our front door. We were opening, what we were doing was a little different though, because historically that area, especially during that time, was pretty much dominated by sports bars. We were opening a bar called The Alchemist, which was a craft cocktail bar with no televisions. And it was also on the second floor of a space where you'd have to walk through a kind of obscure entranceway and go up the stairs. So a lot of people were like, what are you doing? Like, why are you opening a cocktail bar? But this was also a time where Prohibition era cocktails and the speakeasy movement was getting big in San Francisco,
I see.
really pioneered by amazing bars in New York. And we were like, at the time, finding space in San Francisco was hard to come by. And this was kind of like our opportunity to open like a reverse speakeasy. So instead of going down the stairs, you go up the
You go up.
stairs.
Yeah.
And what made the concept work was surviving on Giants fans alone is really not enough. And also what was happening during this time, and to an extent that maybe we weren't so aware of at the time, but there was a big, big startup and tech movement happening. And Soma, where we were located, was the hub of that. So at the same time as the Giants doing amazing and Oracle Park exploding, there was office space being snatched up left and right all around us. So when we opened as a craft cocktail bar, we kind of became like a more of a reprieve for people that lived and worked in the area to go, hey, well, this place isn't packed with Giants fans because this is a cocktail bar with no televisions. And we became kind of a space for those people to come for happy hours and find a place to be like, hey, we can people don't know about this place yet. You go in and you go up the stairs and we can reserve these lounge areas and have these company celebrations. And being at a time when startup culture was thriving in the city, and you might know this as a startup. Startups celebrate every little milestone, that
Absolutely.
they hit, especially in the early
Yes.
days. So there was always a celebration happening. There was always a team having happy hour. So that combined with the momentum from the Giants, of course, we were coming up on another World Series win the following year. It really kept us busy all the time. So we didn't have a huge struggle going from starting to getting that regular following. It kind of just happened immediately. And in a way, it's great because you open your doors and immediately your place was filled. It also kind of makes you kind of complacent in a way because then you get to a point where years down the line, COVID hits, and where we are now, you start to look back and go, well, I can't just open my doors and people just file in. That's not
Absolutely.
how things normally work when you open a new business. But going back to your question, that was our first 2 years of just opening the doors, and we didn't have to do much, and the customers
Yeah.
came.
You had tremendous luck and you got a great location with good foot traffic, but then more so you found a unique wedge where you weren't attracting those sports fans. You were attracting the people that wanted as you mentioned, the reprieve, wanted a
Right.
break from all of the other bars in that area. So you found a unique wedge there and you were able to capitalize on it.
Right.
How did you spread the word of mouth? Back in the day, what were the types of marketing channels that you were using and how has that changed over the years? And maybe we can also tie it afterwards to COVID and where the city is currently.
Right. Using social media back then wasn't as big. So having a great PR team was great. We had luckily had a good friend, Lisa Nora's PR. She was incredible. And she was kind of the one that guided us through the initial marketing stages of just getting the word out there. And having a great publicist and someone that was connected with local media and national media is incredibly important at the time. So in those days, and a lot of this is still out there now, but this gets you write-ups in blogs like Eater and 7x7 magazine and SF Chronicle. And at that time, I think the media was also hungry for what San Francisco was producing, because obviously we're known for our restaurant scene and incredibly talented chefs and creative things happening in food and beverage. And at this time, cocktails and bars were kind of having its spotlight moment because there was so much creativity happening. And we were kind of transitioning from kind of what I mentioned back when I was promoting nightclubs, right? This was an era of drinking vodka Red Bulls and, liquid cocaine shots and, stuff like that, to now being sophisticated drinkers and going and understanding cocktail culture and prohibition era cocktails, like where this came from and then where this is going. And then people were diving in, really interested about what was in the glass. So marketing our bar back then, it was more important not only to have a great vibe, great design, but what was in the glass was very important. Versus now, how the glass looks on Instagram might be
Yeah,
more important
is
than
more important, right?
what's actually in there. So, it was a time where your menu, people dived into your menu and all of that. So local PR was really highlighting those things. And that's kind of how we got our name out there.
Makes sense. And when you started opening up more bars and more venues, how do you and your team think about creating a new concept, right? Like, what do you look for in a new concept? And how do you go out and test whether there is a need for that type of concept in San Francisco? And more specifically, in the neighborhood or the location that you're choosing to go after?
I think concepting is interesting because the way we built our places, Alchemist was kind of a more original. We wanted something speakeasy-ish, but not like the same traditional look that everyone's going for. So it has kind of a steampunk, kind of a vintage steampunk look. But a lot of our other places that we opened, because we didn't have a ton of funding, we didn't do these ground up basic renovations, basically saying like, found a space and we go, we're going to take a concept and just build
Build it out.
but we actually went into spaces that were kind of already, they were like either closed or formerly a restaurant or bar. And then
Right.
you kind of get in there and you see what you can do with that space. And you try to concept around it and around for the neighborhood. So with Woodbury, which is the second one, which was actually right below Alchemist, it was a restaurant that didn't end up making it, but it was a 1 month remodel. So we had to do what we could. So we kind of created this lodge style kind of space with a lot of warm wood all over. We had antler chandeliers and taxidermy on the walls. So it kind of felt like you were in a lodge. And, this place did have TVs all around. So it was kind of like, it almost felt like a country themed bar before that whole thing became super popular. But it was always, for us, it was around like, how can we be creative and do what we can with the space? Because, when you put $1 million into a restaurant, it'll take you forever to make that back,
Right.
and your
Absolutely.
chances of failure are way higher. And not to mention you need way more investors. But if you can flip a concept quickly, utilizing what you have, utilizing what was already built in, you have a much higher success rate. So we did a lot of concepting around that. And then following that members only, it was formerly the Saratoga.
The
It's already an
Saratoga, yeah.
incredibly beautiful space. So we concepted around that, utilizing a lot of what was already in there and kind of putting our take in it. So yeah, so we concept for the neighborhood, but we also try to find just fun and engaging elements that make you like being in the space fun in addition to having great food and drink. So that's kind of how we approach a lot of that.
I'm super curious. What did you learn from doing members only?
I learned that passion projects and doing something you really love, no matter how beautiful space, is really fun, but also how important the location really is. And also I think also learned how fragile certain neighborhoods in San Francisco are and how they
Right.
differ. Members only was one of the places that, we started, we did really, really well in.
Right. It caught fire.
We caught food and it was amazing. I think people really loved it. It was a chic space. It was a seen and be seen kind of space. And we noticed a lot of our clients like dressed up to come out there. And we felt like, wow, we did this kind of impossible feat where we were in this kind of obscure corner of Lower Nob Hill and not a lot of foot traffic, but we really built a following. But the reason why I mentioned about fragility is because, come 2023, San Francisco gets hit with this incredibly negative narrative, and the entire city gets highlighted by the homelessness, crime, break-ins, dirty streets. And because we had bars in different neighborhoods, members only was the one that I felt like was affected the most because we were not in the Tenderloin, but we were right
Right.
next to it. So we just kind of got grouped into being in that same place. So essentially, the press was like, this is a terrible part of the city, don't go there. And immediately people stopped coming there. And that's where business changed. You realize how susceptible where you are, and how people view your city affects your business. So
Absolutely.
that was a big way.
I've talked to several restaurant owners in what colloquially is called Tender Knob area.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these are some of the best restaurants I've ever tried. And
Mhm.
I remember in 2022, 2023, the sentiment was so low because of that narrative that plagued the city. Where are we now as, where is nightlife, restaurants, hospitality in San Francisco today? What's your general take on it? What's the vibe check there? And
The vibe check.
what would it take to get us back to that peak when you started?
Yeah, I mean, I think the vibe check right now is we're on the up and up. We're not back to that yet, but we are
We're not
going in the
back.
right direction now, right? And I think I give a lot of credit to our new mayor for really setting that positive energy and really driving the change that we need. We're seeing that, and a lot of that goes back to seeing these kind of indicators, right? That we're going the right direction. So some things are like, hey, office space, the vacancy rate going down, and companies taking an interest in taking up office space again and getting people back to the offices. Another indicator for is more conferences being booked in San Francisco,
Absolutely.
and there's confidence in, hey, we are still a world-class tech hub with the brightest minds in the country, and these conferences should happen in San Francisco. So we're seeing that with more conferences booking in Moscone, especially this year compared to last year, and with the Harlequin really close by, we really feel we're on the pulse of that. So those things are big indicators we're on the upswing, right? The other one is just, like you said, policies in San Francisco, increasing police staffing, putting a big focus on public safety and cleaner streets, and saying that we cannot accept these conditions. So I think a lot of those will start to change the narrative, right? Because I think, crime is already down, car break-ins are down, the streets do look cleaner, and there is a city hall that is now focused on these big problems that kind of got us to where we were that we don't want to go back to. So that's so we're on the up and up, and I think like that's a really, really good place to be, right? And I think to get us back to that heyday, I think we need people to come back
Come
to the
back. Yeah.
city. We especially need young people to come back. I know remote work is kind of a thing, and it's probably here to stay, but I think we need to have a more of a hybrid work. Thing. As much as we love remote work, people that are in their 20s should not be home 5 days a
Absolutely
week.
not.
Um,
Absolutely not. That
built so many. Yeah,
destroys your inner confidence and destroys your drive. I would never
right.
recommend it.
Right. So even I think even just because you can, you should. If you have the opportunity to go and work and collaborate with people in person, you just learn so much. Because I learned so much of my professional development working in startups in the early days, taking like being in the office, taking being in person meetings and collaborating, and then going out to happy hours and lunches with coworkers and meeting new people and finding new places. And so, like, if you're going to live in a city, you need to take advantage of all that the city has to offer, and you can't do that by ordering DoorDash every day. So, I think to get us back to that, we need, new generations. Every year there's new graduates coming in and new minds coming into AI and all of this, all these wonderful industries in the city. So we need people to come back, and we need like companies to also invest in that, and to host these happy hours. Because what I used to say, what I used to remember was that every great night out in the city a lot of times started at happy hour, right? You 5:30, and you're like, hey, let's go grab a drink somewhere with your coworkers, and that drink at happy hour ends up with you going to dinner in another neighborhood of the city, right? You might go from Soma and go, hey, let's go grab dinner in the Mission, and then from there you might go, hey, let's go to another bar in the Marina, or let's go to a nightclub. But everything stemmed from being in the office. You're already downtown, and then going out to a happy hour nearby. And then that took you on a journey all around the city. But imagine you're at home in your PJs, going from your home in your PJs to going out
Yeah,
downtown. It's so much harder to get people to do that.
it is. Absolutely.
So I think a lot of it stems from bringing our downtowns back, getting workplace culture back, even if it's hybrid, but also getting people to understand the value of these happy hours and collaborations and going out. And then I think that will start to snowball into the city, getting back to all the neighborhoods thriving again.
Yeah, I love it. And I appreciate you calling out the behavioral change that needs to happen. And that comes as a result of the policy change and cleaner streets, better policing. I don't want to get too political on the show, but there needs to be, it's a flywheel where things
Right.
start to get better and people feel more comfortable to come back in. And then you start seeing this change in sentiment and also change in behavior. And I hope that in the next, we've been saying this for the past year. People are saying that San Francisco feels like it's back, especially with its tech community thriving again. And I hope that it coincides with, a rise in foot traffic in downtown. So that's
Yes.
amazing. I'm super curious. Tell us about selling your concept to Draymond Green. What was that like?
Well, Draymond, it was amazing. It was amazing to meet him and break bread with him, have a drink with him and chat. And it was really cool. I think it was a testament to what we built, that they were interested and they saw the space and they were interested. It came from, we had a great broker that kind of brought these players to the table. And I think when they saw this project was led by one of his really good friends. His name is Guma, and he was kind of the one that spearheaded this project. And Draymond was not only an investor, but a founder of this. I think when they saw the space and they kind of saw the potential of what it can become, and also the beautiful build out and what was already in place, and they can see that it didn't take much to kind of get this thing going the way they wanted to. So yeah, I thought it was really, really cool that they came and saw that and wanted to plant roots in this location and open up. So I'm just super, happy for them, and seeing all this. If you, check out Mesky SF, and
Meski.
if you see their social, yeah, MESKI, so
Meski.
it was great to see that. And it seems like they have they built a great team, and I'm just excited for them. But it was a great experience to be able to meet him, sit with him, have a drink, and chat about the Warriors. And of course he's so busy with the
Yeah,
season, but
for
the fact
sure.
that he's involved and putting roots in San Francisco, I think I just applaud that. I'm all for it.
Where was the location?
They're at 1000 Larkin Street
I was in
in San
Larkin.
Francisco.
Okay.
So yeah, Mount Hill.
Amazing.
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let's close this off with a couple of rapid fire questions here. So we got a chance to learn a lot about your creative vision of how you create these concepts, how you scale them out, everything from the details of the restaurant, the venue itself, to the drinks. It seems like you put a lot of focus on that aspect of it. Behind the scenes, what would you say for my audience that's watching this, that's considering maybe going into food and beverages? What would you say is like one of the hardest aspects of managing the business behind the scenes?
I think managing people is always the hardest aspect, because your business doesn't run, and it's a reflection of your team and who you have behind it. So it's a huge testament to my team, because I think every piece of our team, you take the people and you play to their strengths, because I am not the one creating these cocktails. I'm also not the one behind the bars shaking these drinks. There's so many people involved in these projects, and it's so many people on a daily basis that keeps the wheels turning, right? So yeah, the hardest thing I think is finding great people to work with you on this, and also finding people that you can put in positions where they are doing the thing that they're good at, right? And figuring out what that is, and managing expectations, and I think being a good owner, what they say is not necessarily like telling people what to do, but making them share your vision and wanting to accomplish the same goals that you accomplish. I think that's it's number one. So I think that's the hardest. It's not building the place. It's not even marketing and all that. But it's all about building the right team.
Absolutely. What is your drink of choice when you go out?
Oh man, I have lots of drinks of choice. I always default to a dirty vodka martini, but I like to start my nights
I
usually
see.
with a Negroni and
Okay.
maybe and
Okay.
an old
Nice.
fashioned. I'm pretty basic. I'm pretty basic.
Nice. Nice. Okay. And then I know now you're in the suburbs, but if you had to go out into the city, what is your favorite neighborhood to be in? And what is like your favorite nightlife activity in the city?
Yeah, I'm actually not very far. I'm still like 15 minutes from downtown, but it's hard to say. I think the Mission was kind of my favorite neighborhood, and I apologize, I haven't been back in a really long time, and I think it's still like one of the coolest neighborhoods that has like so much stuff going on. I'm in the Soma all the time now, and so I end up spending a lot of time in there because that's kind of where I work. But yeah, it's hard to say my favorite neighborhood to be in. Man, that's a hard one, honestly. I would say right now it's probably like Mission Bay in a way,
Mission
and the
Bay.
dog
Interesting.
patch. Yeah, because I
Interesting.
find
Yeah.
myself just finding new stuff there all the time now. But I think I'm discovering that neighborhood more. But my default go-to is kind of like that Tender Knob area,
Tender enough. Let's go. You're
place that
brave.
people are saying don't go. I'm like
Yeah.
discovering Mission Bay, but I still default to going over there. Some of my favorite bars there are like going to Rye, going to
Yes.
PCH.
Yes.
Some amazing, and so much good food there. So yeah, so I'll like start discovering, but I'll always end up at where I'm familiar.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Next time you're in the Mission, we're here. We are
Yeah,
right next to Flower and Water. So it's a bit more of the gentrified area of the Mission, but there are some amazing restaurants here, amazing bars. And I am so excited about, we just had a friend that moved down to, they got an office in Soma, and a lot of my
yeah,
startup friends are opening up offices in Soma again. That entire area used to be a
yeah,
ghost town, and now it's starting to come back. So
yeah. We're
I'm very
seeing them. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that too.
Yes. Phil, thank you so much for everything you do for our city. Thank you for coming on the show and imparting your wisdom and also telling us about your story. And I'm excited to see where you guys go. Let's definitely stay in
Thank
touch.
you so much, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.